What we got? Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Welcome to First Yahudin Messianic Temple here in Lake Placid, Florida. I am his servant, Maria Simpson, and welcome again to this beautiful Shabbat that we're having, and it's gorgeous here in Lake Placid, Florida. It is sunny, gorgeous, beautiful. It's the beginning almost of autumn, and it's one of my favorite seasons, even though here we don't have like the beautiful different colors of leaves and so on, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful day. So with that in mind, today I am going to talk about and bring you the teaching of really why did I get married. It's a very, very good question. Why did I get married? Many people ask themselves, why did they get married? There's a lot of discrepancy in marriage today. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of mistakes, and many really don't understand what marriage is all about. Now, to understand marriage, really, we need to see marriage from a different perspective, so we can be able to understand the other person. Okay? Now, this is a very, very deep question on marriage. There's a lot. This is there's a lot. I can go in much talking about marriage, because there's a lot about marriage. But one thing that I want all the ladies out there, all the sisters that are listening to this, one thing in marriage that we should not allow is really when we get abuse. That's something that is not biblically. And a lot of times, many believers misunderstand or take what is said in the word, and they really take it out of context. Any type of abuse, physical, sexually, in a marriage, that is not that it shouldn't be. So that's just to let you know before anything, because many times, many believers, especially sisters, believe that that the man is the head of the household. He is the head of the household, and really we have to respect our husbands. But if a husband is not walking as a husband should, or has a relationship with the Most High, and then a lot of times what comes in is pride, and there's a lot of marriages that a husband might mistreat his wife because that's the way it is, and that is not biblically inclined. So with that in mind, let me ask you a couple of questions that actually is very common in marriages today before I bring the word. The questions is about marriage is this: does a wife have to submit to her husband? What does it mean that husbands are to love their wives? These are very good questions. How often should a married couple have sex? Is abuse an acceptable reason for divorce? How can I restore my marriage? Is it wrong for a married couple to have sex just for pleasure? What would it be the response whose spouse has had an affair? Do I have to confess my adultery to my spouse? What should be the view of romance in a marriage? Now, these are very, very, very good questions. But see, marriage has two sides. Marriage has a physical side, and marriage is really all about spirituality. And I'm going to speak on that in a little bit. And these are other questions. Am I fighting? I'm fighting for my marriage, but it feels hopeless. Any suggestions? My spouse left me. How do I begin the healing process? Now, what does it mean to take someone in marriage? What does it mean when you get married and you're in the altar? What does it mean to get married? The concept of taking someone in marriage is to accept him or her completely. What does that mean? You are taking his or her strength, imperfections, deficiencies, failures, and possibilities. You are completely embracing him or her as part of yourself forever, and you are rejecting all others. When you say yes to your bride or your groom, you are saying no to the rest of the world. When you say I take you, you are saying out of everyone else in the world, I am committing to you and you alone. This is where a lot of men and women can get into trouble if they are not vigilant. If you are not vigilant, if you don't understand exactly what marriage is, what is the point of marriage besides having children, besides multiplying? What really is marriage? Well, let me ask you personally questions about your marriage. How do you see the glass in your marriage? Do you see it half full, half empty? Or do you just see an empty glass? How you see the glass in your marriage is the amount of time you have invested in it. Why? Let me tell you, the most important investment you will ever make in your marriage is yourself. If you want to have a happy relationship, invest into learning about your spouse, your partner's needs and desires, and you will obtain a huge profit. To understand marriage, it's really, you have to understand any relationships. Because relationships are very complicated. And it's very hard work. You need to tend to family and friends. It's not glamorous. It's also lifelong. It never ends, but the rewards are priceless. See, when we come to marriage, we think, okay, we get married and, we say I do. And then, we're in the honeymoon stages, which, after the honeymoon, what happens? You have children. But see, what a lot of people don't understand, that marriage is a lot of work. Marriage is a commitment that you are committing to. When you get married, you do not get married because you are in love. Love has nothing to do with that. How can I say this? When you get married, you don't marry for love. You marry because it's the right thing to do in the eyes of Elohim. Before you get married, you are already in love. so to speaking, if you are in love. Because many people marry for different reasons. So when you marry and you say, I do, you already making a commitment, you're making a promise. You're signing with a verbal contract. I do. I do means that you will be committed to this person. You will be committed to this person for the rest of your life, no matter what, unless there is physical abuse. There's some kind of abuse. But marriage is a lot of work. And the reason that many do not understand marriage is because marriage really is not natural to any of us. Because marriage is not natural. Marriage is spiritual. Marriage is an institution that was not instituted by man. It was instituted by Yahweh, by Elohim. And many don't understand marriages because they don't understand Yahweh. So if you don't understand your marriage, how can you understand him? And if you don't understand him, how can you understand your marriage? Because marriage is spiritual. Marriage is not natural. See, it is natural for us to have sex. It is natural for us to live together. But when we do this, literally, we are not obeying him. That is not what marriage is all about. Yes, part of that, you have intimacy, you have sex and all that stuff. But marriage, it is spiritual. And I'll get to that in a little bit. What we need to understand is that we are not animals. One of the things that set us different from animals is that he, Yahweh, Elohim, God, has given us a reason. We reason. Animals don't do this. Animals work by instincts. So when we don't understand something, especially today, since I'm going to be speaking about marriages, it's because we're lacking some form of knowledge that we were not introduced to. Marriage is very holy, is kadosh, is set apart. But today, what has happened today? People make fun of marriage. There's even greeting cards when marriages get divorced. There's nothing funny about divorce, because in divorce, everybody, the children, the husband, the wife, the parents, the family, really, they hurt. Because now there's a separation. But today, I am going to take you on both sides. I'm going to take you into really what marriage is, which is spiritual, and then also it is natural. And the reason many don't understand is because since it's spiritual, they go more towards the natural. I remember when I got married with him, and he would smile, and he would give me roses, and he would do this, and he would do that. And he made me feel special. But he doesn't do this anymore. And then you look at her, it says, I remember her when she used to fix her hair, and she used to wait for me when I used to visit her when we were dating. She was different. What happened? Our parents have done the best they could have done. We mimic our parents, their marriage. In a home, if you saw your father yelling at your mother or beating her up and you were brought up in this, even though you didn't like it, you saw this, it's a custom. When you turn into an adult, you will do the same thing. But that's not what marriage is. the way the institution of marriage, of the way Elohim wants it to be, is very sacred. It's something that he has given you a gift that is very profound, that when you get married, you are no longer, listen very carefully, please, and I hope you understand what I'm about to say, and I just want you to have your mind open. You enter that marriage no more as a man and a woman. You enter that marriage as a husband and a wife. And the reason that a lot of marriages don't understand is because they enter their marriage not as a husband and wife. They keep on calling themselves this man or this woman. This is my woman. This is my man. No, that's your husband. That is your wife. And there's a reason why it has those titles. Now, what is the key ingredients of making your marriage last? For me, I'm going to tell you, is two. One, that Elohim, God, should be the number one in that marriage. And number two is called commitment. Because when you are committed to each other, everything else follows along. What am I talking about? When you are committed to each other, there's respect, there's love, there's communication, there's understanding, there's intimacy, there's knowledge. You cater to his needs, he caters to your needs. So really, these two are very, very powerful things in a marriage. It's called commitment. Commitment is a responsibility that you have promised, just like when there's two partners in a business, they are committed to make that business work. Marriage is the same thing. Not that marriage is a business. I'm just comparing what commitment is. But what happens when you don't understand what is commitment? You cannot understand respect. You cannot understand love. You cannot understand her needs, his needs. You cannot understand communication. You cannot understand a lot of things. You cannot understand why is she behaving this way? Why is he behaving this way? So the two main key ingredients really to make a marriage last are two. Elohim, God should be the number one in your marriage. And we'll find out why. Because of course, he's the one that instituted it. And then two, commitment, because everything else will follow along. The number one reason in marriage problem is commitment. And you made a decision, commitment, a choice to be committed to this man, to this woman, and make the marriage work. I'm gonna tell you something. In a marriage, the honeymoon will not always be there. The honeymoon, there will be a time that is going to be over. See, you get married and you are on your honeymoon 24 hours a day. Whether you're sleeping, waking, you're on your honeymoon. In other words, you reach the moon, so to speak. But there really comes a time that marriage, now there's no more honeymoon. It doesn't mean you don't have a honeymoon. It just means you don't have it as often because now you're thinking about something else. See, I call this different doors in marriages. In a marriage, you go through different doors. Every time you are going to have an experience, something new, you're entering into a door that you really don't know. You don't know what surprise it is because it wasn't there when you first met, when you first got married. So you go into this door, and to me, these doors that I call them doors in marriages are called ranks. You every time you pass this door and you pass the experience in your marriage inside that room, you are giving a rank. And when you are finished, just like when you are in the army or in the armed service, you start from being a what? I think it's called a soldier or a private. You start as a private in your marriage. But as you go into these doors and you get the ranks, now you are going higher. And going higher means different. You go through your marriage, and you are in years of marriage. For example, my husband and I, we've been married for 40 years. Even though when we were 17 years of marriage, we were divorced for 3 months. Now, how can that be? It means that in our marriage, when we first got married, even though we believed in God, sort of speaking, but really we were not walking the way we should have walked with Him. So in our marriage, in the beginning, for 17 years, there was a lot of learning. There was a lot of indifferences. We allow certain things in our lives, for example, other people like, my mom and my mother-in-law and other people to be in our lives, in our marriage, and that is not good. So what happened? We didn't put God first, even though we believed in Him always. Because when you get married, you think you're so up there in the moon somewhere, and you feel so good that you said, I'm going to feel like this for the rest of my life. And that's when we're wrong. It's not that you don't love each other. It's now you're experiencing new things that makes you different. That makes you more mature. Okay? So what happened? We got divorced for 3 months. We came back. Our life began to change when we realized that we literally, and I mean this truly, no matter how many flaws my husband has, no matter how many flaws I have, we cannot live without each other. Because there's something about my husband that I need, and it's something that let me tell you what it is. He's my strength. Literally. He's my guard. He's my protection. He's my head. He is the father of my children. He is wonderful. And what happens is, when you put Elohim first, He begins to give you this, He begins to reveal this to you in your life. And then He begins to teach you really what marriage is all about, and is spiritual. So we come together, and we've been married for 40 years. We have a little ups and downs. But one thing in marriage that we have learned, it's really when there is an indifference amongst both of us. One stays quiet and let the person speak. Let them, let them whine and let them say what they have to say. And when everything comes down, then we come together and we talk. We say, I'm sorry. We forgive. We hug. I look in his eyes, he looks into my eyes, and we say to each other, we have come a long way. There's nobody like you. And in reality, if you look at your spouse, there's nobody like your spouse. And then what's the difference between us then, before 17 years of marriage, and us now? We put Elohim first. We're committed to each other and to Elohim. And what has happened is our love for each other has grown. You don't lose love as you're more into the marriage. As a matter of fact, you begin to love each other more. You become, as I call it, two oak trees. Two oak trees that are very, very powerful. And the roots are going very deeply. They're very strong. The roots of an oak tree are very strong. And they go very deep into the earth. And these two oak trees begin to really, underneath the earth, the roots is their heart, is their love for each other. That no matter above, outside, no matter what storms come, no matter what hails, no matter how windy it is, no matter how scorching the sun is, no matter who comes, no matter what the natural disaster comes, they will not be apart. They grow stronger and stronger. And you know what? And then as you get older, you realize that you're getting old together, not apart. Amen. With our flaws and everything. And guess what? We smile and we laugh. Because not only do we look different, not only is everything different, but we're more united. There's more to get. There's more warmth. There's family togetherness. And it feels nice. And guess what? Our children, our grandchildren, our parents, our siblings, they look upon us and they say, how have they gone all this? But see, we have gone through our ups and downs. And I believe from our own experience, unless there's abuse in a marriage, we have been in our own divorce, and that is very scary. It hurts. Everybody hurts. And everything that we go through the marriage is for a reason, for also to learn something. What have you learned from your marriage? What have you learned from your husband and your wife? Stop making fun at your ex-wife, at your ex-husband. Because that man and that woman is probably the mother and father of your children. Marriage works. In modern times, it tells you it doesn't. And I'm going to take you into the scriptures. Friends, love is something that will open the heavens over us and change the spiritual atmosphere in our lives and in others. Love overcomes. Love never fails. Out of all the relationships you can have, and I'm speaking about a mother and child, a father and child, a mother, the sister and sister, siblings, friends. There's no relationship like a husband and a wife. None. Do you all agree with me? And if you don't, that's okay, because I'm going to explain it why. There's no relationship like a husband and a wife. Why is that? Because it is the only relationship that the two will become one. There's no other relationship that you become one. You do not become one with your friends. You do not become one with your children. You do not become one with your siblings. You do not become one, hallelujah, with your father, with your mother. You only become one when you are husband and wife. It is a unique relationship. It is kadosh. It is spiritual. And it's the only one, the only relationship that the two become one. We have to understand that everybody needs somebody in their lives. Do you believe this? The problem with this is when you have that special someone in your life for many years, what do you do? The same face, the same body, the same arguments. What do you do? What do you do when you have this? What will make somebody happy in their marriage? The answer to these questions, one must first and foremost realize that everyone needs somebody in their life. The Bible states that it's not good for man to be alone. Yes or no?
Yes.
And when you're going from flower to flower, when you're going like a bee, when you're going from flower to flower like a bee, you are only getting the nectar. But there's no union. Because you're trying different flowers to see the aroma and really the nectar. Somebody's laughing here. And see,
there's a lot of that now.
in a marriage, it's not about the nectar. It's beyond the nectar. It's the unity. And I'll explain a little bit what I'm talking about. I don't know if you... I don't know if this is going to... I mean, I'm going to try to explain it the best I can. Every human being needs to love and to be loved. It is a gift given by Elohim. You know that, right?
Yeah.
It is a natural thing to want to love and to be loved. What is marriage? Marriage means different things to different people. For example, why do people marry? And I'm going to give you a couple examples. There are people who marry for money, some for loneliness, some for obligation, some for arrangements, some for love, some for religious reasons, and some because it's the right thing to do. What do I mean?
Some for health insurance.
I'm sorry?
Health insurance.
Some for health insurance, my husband says. Some marry because it's the right thing to do. What is that? What do I mean? What do I mean by that? Many do not understand marriage because it is divine and was not established by man, but by Yahweh. Marriage is not an it. You don't call your marriage an it. But marriage is spiritual. What is so spiritual about marriage? It is spiritual because it did not come from the natural man. It came from the divine source. As divine, it reflects Elohim's intention to share the gifts of love and joy between two people who, through their love, will bring the fruit of their joining to the world for the benefits of the world as well as for themselves. Hallelujah. These fruits, listen, these fruits are called your children. It's also called what comes out of your heart when two souls meet. Hallelujah. And what happens with that? There is a great manifestation, which means it reflects your inner being. Marriage, and I already stated this, is different from any relationship because it's the only one that the two become one. How can that be? See, when you get married, when you're in the altar and you say, I do, before you sign that piece of paper, which is natural, you're already saying in the spiritual world, you say, I do. I do is spiritual. You are already saying I do in front of many witnesses. Both of you are getting married. You say, I do. So before you sign that piece of paper, you are already married when you say I do, because it's spiritual. Many say marriage is just a piece of paper. Have you ever heard of that? It's just a piece of paper. Why do I need to get married?
Yeah, I heard of that.
Marriage, of course, is just a piece of paper, just like a lottery ticket. It's just a piece of paper. And when you got the winning number on that piece of paper, it's worth a lot. A mortgage contract is just a piece of paper. It's what the paper signifies. A piece of paper represents is a bundle of rights, responsibility, and privileges a husband and a wife have together in marriage. And their children are part of equal protection because they fall under uniquely of who we are in a marital family. Now, this is where I'm going to tell you what a spiritual marriage is. You want to go with me? Please go with me to Genesis chapter 1. See, the reason I go to Genesis a lot in the beginning is because everything starts in the beginning.
You gotta have a beginning.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Can't have an end if you
Now,
Yep.
please pay attention what I am about to read, or maybe if you're reading with me, okay? Because something happened here that is beyond physical. Something happened here spiritual between the man and the woman. And if you go with me to Genesis chapter 1, verse number 26. Then Elohim said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth on the earth. So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him. Male and female created he them. Does yours say that?
Yes.
Now, watch this. On verse 28. Then Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, when Elohim created man and woman, he did not create two beings. He created one being. Look what it says, and let me take you there again. On verse number 27. So Elohim, the word Elohim there says is the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was Elohim, and the word was Elohim. So Elohim created man man in his own image. In the image of Elohim, he created him. Not them, him. One. Male and female created he them.
And we're both sex together. Wow.
So when Yahweh Elohim created man, he created a female and a male in one man.
In one body.
But see, they were attached. This is why we have males and females hormones. One rules the other. In my case, female rules, my hormones rules females. My husband's the male. But look at what happened, because we need to understand the importance of marriage that is spiritual. Are you ready for this?
No.
Look at what it says now. He created them, but now something happens on chapter number 2, okay? Now he's about to separate them. And this is when Elohim took the rib out of Adam. Go with me to chapter 2 of Genesis, verse number 21. And Yahweh Elohim caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam. Adam is not a name of a man. Adam means mankind. Adam. So when he created them, they were both Adam. They were both male and female. And look what it says. And he slept and took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh. Close up the flesh in his place. Then the rib which Yahweh Elohim had taken from man, remember man in the beginning, male and female, he made into a woman. And he brought her to the man. Before, the female side was with a male side. And they were one. It says created he, him, one. But look at verse 23. And Adam said, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She, now she's called a she. She shall be called woman. In Hebrew, it's called Isha. Because she was taken out of a man, Ish. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and they shall be what? One flesh. The only time that you are one flesh is when you are a man and a woman are married and they are in intimacy. A man and a woman not being married cannot have intimacy. They will just literally have sex.
No commitment.
There is a difference. What am I talking about? Are you asking that question? Only a husband and a wife will be one flesh. They will have what is called intimacy. And I will explain this in a little bit. How come a man and a woman cannot have intimacy? No, a man and a woman, what they're going to have is sex. They're going to have pleasure of sex, and more sex, and more sex. There is a difference. When a husband and wife are married, it is kadosh. She is kadosh. She is separated to him. He is kadosh. He is separated to her. And the two become one because there something happens. It's beyond sex. What happens there? In intimacy, as a husband and a wife, when the two come together. Now, who are these two? The two that come together is the feminine energy and the masculine energy. What does that mean? A female receives. A male gives. Because right there, I just read it to you. What does that mean? What does it mean to have a female energy? A female energy, a woman, she's the receiver, she's the receptive, she's soft, fluid, she's allowing, she's nurturing, she's sensual, she's empathetic, she's flexible, she's emotional, and she is what is called the spiritual realm. In the Bible, it does not state that a wife should love her husband because a wife's natural instinct is to love her husband. But in the Bible, it says for a man or a husband to love his wife because it is not a natural instinct for a man to love his wife. He has to be taught. He has what is called sexual desires. And he will desire her because he loves her and all this, but it's beyond that. Do you understand that? So she receives, she's the receptor. Females, listen very carefully. Females' energy is about staying open to receive. What do I mean? Receive guidance, receive touch, receive support, for example, receive tenderness, receive respect, receive honor. Not having to go anywhere or do anything. Feminine energy is about slowing down, not like the ever-ready battery that sometimes we are, and relaxing because we receive. Letting go and allowing the flow of life to take its course. It is about being present and not directing the flow of events as much as allowing the events to unfold. Going with the flow is an example of feminine energy, but too much feminine energy can leave you vulnerable. So be careful. And I'll explain this in a little bit. Now, what is masculine energy? A man gives. When a man doesn't give, he doesn't feel, in other words, he doesn't feel as strong, sort of speaking. That's why he likes to please his wife. Honey, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go to eat today? Wherever you want to go. He wants to please. A masculine energy is focused, is goal-oriented, is stable, is strong, is structured, is logical, is driven, and this is what is called the physical realm. So now we have two realms. We have the wife, that's the feminine energy, that she is called, hallelujah, the spiritual realm. And then we have the masculine energy, the man or the husband, that he is the physical realm. Men represents the earth. Women represents heaven. And when these two join together, this is when the two become one. Now, who is the only one that's called one in the Bible? Is Yahweh. God, he is only one. So there, when the two become one, it means that in that moment, when you're in intimacy, in that moment that he is giving to her and she is receiving, at that moment you become one, because the one that appears is Yahweh. Is when you can experience what is eternity. You cannot, if you're not married, listen very carefully, because it goes beyond the paper. If you're not married, it will just be a man and a woman having sex. There's no intimacy. Because when a man and a woman has sex, once they're done, it says, okay, it's time for you to go. Until next time. But when a husband and wife, they have intimacy, and their two become one, after you're done, you want more. You caress, you hug. Because that feeling is something that is not natural. It is spiritual. Do you all understand where I'm coming from? Or no? Mm-hmm. No? Listen very carefully. A masculine energy is giving energy, and an energy that is moving upward. It penetrates and is directing energy in a certain way. Your masculine energy is your protection when you use it in a healthy way. I gotta show you this. Okay? Let me show you on the board. If you notice here, okay? Marriage really has an age, okay? Which means, age means time, okay? And also marriage has two R's, representing his and hers, talking about their energy. What happens when a husband and a wife, okay, he is the giver. Look what happens. And she, what does she do? She is the receiver, okay? These are two opposites of energy. This is heaven, sort of speaking, okay? This is heaven. She is heaven, because it's spiritual. And he is earth. What happens? What happens here? Here is called, now that you're having what? Intimacy. And who is this intimacy? This intimacy is Yahweh. So what happens? The two will merge into what? The two merge into what? They merge into what? This intimacy of who? This is where we find what? We find Yahweh. And the two become what?
One.
The two become one flesh, meaning that before Yahweh separated them, when you come to this, you become like an original before he separated. You become one the way originally he wanted you to be. You understand that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So with intimacy, we're going back all the way to the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Wow.
Because look at how interesting this is. And please go with me to the Bible. Now, marriage did not start on earth, which it did with Adam and Eve, but really, marriage was in the mind of Yahweh and is spiritual. In heaven, there's no marriage. There's none. But what is love? Love is spiritual because you don't see it. What is joy? Joy is spiritual because you don't touch it. So everything is spiritual. Here, love. What is love? It's the biggest frequency. And this is why he says, men, husbands, love your wife. Why? Because a man, even though he loves, but he learns it from his wife. Because when look at this, when he gives his wife, what does he give his wife? He gives his wife life. What does the wife do in intimacy? She gives him what? Love. He receives love. So the two become one originally the way it's supposed to be. Now watch this. Please go with me to the book of Genesis. I know this is a little bit maybe complex, but I'm trying to explain it the best I can. Now, how can Adam be speaking about marriage when he doesn't even know what that is? Remember when he says, now this is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, And she'll be called woman because she was taken out of man. Remember that?
Yes.
But look at what it says on chapter number 2, verse 24. This is therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Now, how could Adam be speaking about a wife when no wife is mentioned here except for here?
Yeah.
Because the one that's writing this is Moses.
Yeah.
The one that's writing this is Moses. It's not Adam. Because if you remember, the one that constantly went up in Mount Zion, who was it?
Moses.
It was Moses. So Moses was one with Yahweh. Moses understood the importance of marriage because when we come to him, Yeshua is our husband.
That's good.
And the two will become one.
Wow.
When he says, and the two will become one flesh, he was talking about intimacy. Which here it says,
Wow.
therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife.
Yes.
His wife. A man doesn't leave the mother and father so he can be joined to another woman.
Yeah.
That is things of the world. When a man does this, he is just going to be instantly gratified. Because there's an urge a man needs to be satisfied. This is why it says a man should not be alone. And in the New Testament it says, do not, when you're married, do not separate from any time unless you are what? Praying or you're fasting. Because the enemy comes. The enemy comes. And he will look like the most beautiful woman or the most beautiful, handsomest man. And guess what? And then she looks like a Coca-Cola. And he looks like what? Tarzan the Eggman. And guess what happened? And then if you fall, you can fall into a lot of things. You might be having sex with the Satan himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he can write on the wall, on the mirror, welcome to hell. Thank you for joining me. This is why
Welcome to age.
in marriage there's so many divorces, separations today. Because this is an area the Hasatan knows how important it is for the two to become one in intimacy. Because there, when you become one in intimacy as a husband and wife, you meet your maker. You meet what it is, what is called eternal life. And it's a feeling that you don't want it to leave. But it only lasts for seconds, yes or no? Just seconds. And that is the only time that you can really feel what heaven is, what eternity is. And it's a feeling, literally, as a husband and wife, when you have an intimacy, that you, because there Yahweh meets you. And the three of you, there's the wife, there's the husband, and there's Yahweh. Because now he loves her like himself. And now she is surrendering completely as a receptor to her husband. And there, both of them become one. In intimacy, there cannot be no more. This nonsense of a threesome and foursome and an orgy. What is that? You know who do that? Those are when people used to worship idols, they would do these dance and they would do these orgies, sexual orgies. This is where the golden calf did. They were very perverted. This is when in the time of Noah, mankind was very perverted. And only one man was found that he was righteous. One man, his name was Noah. Because Yahweh was coming to destroy everybody. And what did he say to Noah? Noah, you're going to build the ark, but the first person that you're going to bring into the ark is your wife. You're going to bring your wife and your boys, and your daughters-in-law.
Yeah.
But what did Noah do
Yeah.
when everything was done?
He took out his
Yahweh
kids.
says, when you come out, the one that's going to come after you is your wife.
Yeah, took out his kids.
Well, he made a big mistake because when he came out, the one he brought out was his sons. And the last one was his wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your wife is supposed to be next to you. Not before you, not in back of you, just right next to you.
Yeah.
Listen very carefully. The nature of marriage makes it more than a physical bond, more than an emotional bond. It is in it the deepest meaning, a spiritual bond built out of the depth of love between two souls. See, as human beings, we can relate a lot with physical things. But when it comes to marriage, we cannot relate too much to spiritual things. That's why when you understand how important your marriage is to you, because it's spiritual. Love that forms out of the sacred marriage is deep like this. It seeks to give itself beyond the boundaries of limitations. It seeks to give itself in all directions. Furthering expression of the divine enhances the divine qualities and each spouse so that they both become more complete in their expression of each other. When you have the female and the male, one receives and one gives, you have what is called, you have completeness. You have what is called, let there be lights. You got what is called power. You got what is called eternity. And nobody can separate that because Yahweh says, what Yahweh has joined together, let no man separate. And the man is called Satan. What Yahweh has joined together in marriage, let Satan not separate. Through such divine relationship, the husband and wife become something for each other more than neither one could have become as fully on their own. You cannot do this on your own. Unless you are spiritually minded and your spouse is the same, you can never be completely happy. Who is receiving this message today? Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 6. Now, the one speaking here is Paul. Now, how could Paul, he was an eunuch. He decided that he wasn't going to get married. Paul was not married. Paul never had children. He decided on his own that he was never going to get married. Not because he didn't want to, but he just wanted to give his life to the Most High and live, in a single man, just in a relationship with him. But it's amazing how a man like Paul that never was married, never knew what a relationship was, never had children, never had marriage, can speak about marriage the way he's going to speak on now. But see, he didn't have a marriage with a wife, but he had a marriage with Yeshua HaMashiach.
Amen.
So he compared that. And look at what it says here on Ephesians chapter 5, verse number 6. Let no one deceive you with empty words. For because of these things, the wrath of Elohim comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not be partakers with them, for you were once in darkness, but now you are in light in Yahweh. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in the goodness and righteousness and truth, finding out what is acceptable to Yahweh. Finding what is acceptable to Yahweh. What is acceptable to Yahweh? It's marriage. But a marriage that a man does not abuse his wife, does not enslave his wife, and a marriage that the woman does not belittle her husband. And a woman, honestly, that thinks that she is bigger than her husband. No. Because everything, he is an Elohim of order. But when you, sisters, I'm talking to the sisters, not to all the ladies out there, when you have a husband that is walking with Yahweh, that understand what he is, let me tell you, he'll love you. He will respect you. He is a man that's looking for the heart of Yahweh. He will honor you. He will give you the desires of your heart. Because see, that man is very wise. And that man knows that the more he pleases you, the more you will please him. Do not be unwise, but understand what the will of Yahweh is. Verse 15. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fool, but as wise. Remembering the times, because the days are evil. This is Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15. Verse 17. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of Yahweh is. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. Be filled with the Spirit. Look at this. 21. Submitting to one another in the fear of Yahweh. Wives, submit your own husband as the Lord. For husband is the head of the wife, as also Messiah is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, just as the church is subject to the Messiah, let the wives be their own husband in everything. Husband, love your wives, just as Messiah also loved the church and gave himself for her, that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of the water of the word, and he might present her as himself a glorified church. Instead of saying church, really the word here should be bride. Bride. Not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that you should be holy, kadosh, set apart, and without blemish. So husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Yahweh does, or Yeshua does the Messiah. Now this is, look at what it says on verse number 30. For we are members of his body, and his flesh, and his bone. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Nevertheless, to each of you in particular, so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Please, what does it mean here when it says on verse 31? Brother Simpson, can you read that, please?
31. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh.
Okay. The sad thing about this is that a lot of books have been taken out of the Bible. But what Yeshua was speaking here, he was speaking what is in Mark chapter 10, verse 8. Now, in Mark chapter 10, verse 8, really comes from the Gospel of Thomas. Mark chapter 10, verse 8. Now, this is, the Pharisees are asking Yeshua, should a man divorce his wife? Because see, Judah knows about the concept of two becoming one flesh. They know it's a very powerful thing. But we were never taught this.
Amen.
But look at here on Mark chapter 10, verse number 2. And the Pharisees came and asked him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? They were testing him. And he answered and said unto them, what did Moses command you? 4. And they said, Moses permitted a man to write a certificate of divorce and to dismiss her. And Yeshua answered and said unto them, because of your hardness of your heart, he wrote you this precept. 6. But from the beginning, here we go. From the beginning, please read this. From the beginning of the creation, Elohim made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife. And the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what Elohim has joined, let not man separate.
Wow.
Now, you do not have, and I don't think you do, the Gospel of Thomas. And I will read what Yeshua said and what I just read to you. In the Gospel of Thomas, the Roman decided to take away from the Bible. This is what it says. Ready?
Yes, yes. Wow.
Yeshua said unto them, when you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, the upper like the lower, and when you make the male and the female into a single one, then you will enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Wow.
Can I read that to you again?
Yes, you can. Yes.
In the Gospel of Thomas, that Rome decided to take away, this is what Yeshua meant. Yeshua said unto them, when you make the two one, and when you make the inside, male, female, like the outside, the energy, and the upper, heaven, love, and the lower, earth, physical, and when you make the male and the female into a single one, just like thy beginning, then you will enter into the kingdom of heaven.
Wow.
When you become one flesh, as a husband and wife in intimacy, you enter and you experience entering heaven. Wow. How does it feel?
Awesome.
It's a feeling that you cannot, with words, you cannot say. And today, what is happening? I want to get a divorce.
People don't even get divorced. They don't even get married.
I'm sorry?
People don't even get divorced because they don't even get married.
People don't get divorced, right?
Yeah, because they don't even get married.
Because they don't even get married. Well, let me tell you what happened to me when we first came to Lake Placid in 2004. I used to work in the courthouse here in Sebring. And I used to be in the department where I used to marry people. I was a clerk. And I remember this lady, she was like probably in her, I don't know, late 50s, early 60s. And she brought, she brought her husband, they were going to get married. So we had these literatures that we normally give to people that were going to get married. So it will tell them a little bit of what marriage was all about. So as they finished, and I went to, before they got married, they were just, signing for the marriage license. I went and I handed them, the literature. And she looked at it exactly like this, and she asked me, what's this? I said, well, it tells you about, marriage. What did you expect in marriage? Now, this is a lady, I'm not kidding. This is a lady that married, not 4 times, she married 5 times. So she said to me, she handed it back to me, and she said to me, I don't need this. I have all the experience in the world. Oh, I'm not kidding.
That's like going for a test you keep failing
No.
all the time.
Wow.
Let me...
She's scary.
She said to me, I don't need this. I have all the experience in the world. I have married 4 times, and this is my 6th time.
Wow.
You know what? The only thing I did? I looked at her and I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I just smiled and said, have a good day. You know why? Because the one that's speaking to me is a fool. It's a fool. How can you say, or how can she say that she has married, this is going to be her 6th wedding, and of course she's like 50 something and the man is almost 80 years old. The man is a millionaire, and you can do the math if you want. And how can she say to me that she knows what marriage is all about? She asked her because she's been married 5 times and this is her 6th. See, this is what's happening today in marriages. What is happening today in marriage? What? People don't know what marriage is. They just think it's a piece of paper. I'm going to get married, and if it doesn't go good, I'll get divorced. It doesn't matter. When I was in my hair salon, and I would do girls that were going to get married, 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, you hear the girls, the bride say, you know what, I'm going to get married. And I would say, congratulations. And she would say, yeah, thank you. But if it doesn't go good, I'll get a divorce. What do you think happened with that? What do you think happened with that marriage? Marriage has become an institution in the world like a laughing stock. And see, marriage is kadosh, is sacred. And marriage is something that this person, from the moment you get married until the time you die, you are together and you are committing to each other. And let me tell you, your love for each other grows. You're learning. Besides that you get abused in a relationship, I don't agree with that. But let's suppose that people have flaws, people have different ideas, different things that your spouse, this is, and by the way, let me tell you. You do not own your husband or your wife. You don't own them. You don't own your life. You don't own your children. You don't own your house. You don't own them. You don't even own the oxygen that you breathe. Your husband and your wife is a gift given to you by Yahweh. When you get naked in front of your husband and the husband before his wife, you're not embarrassed. You surrender completely to each other. But your husband and wife, you don't own them. And this is the problem we have. Well, I don't like the way she talks. And I don't like the way he said. You know what? Why don't you sit together and you communicate as adults? You trying to change somebody that you met a certain way. And yes, we have the choice to change, to better ourselves. We have to evolve to better the relationship. But how can you change somebody or in your life when you are not changing? How can you tell your husband what to say or what to do when you yourself are not changing? How can you tell your wife what to do for you when you are not changing? Love is not because actions speak louder than words. The day you die, you do not take your husband or your wife with you. You do not own them. It is a gift that Elohim has given you to have a husband and a wife. It is a gift. It is a gift, especially for you. And what are you doing with the gift that Yahweh has given you? Why do you talk bad about your husband or your wife? Why do you do that? This is a man and a woman that in good times and bad times, they're with you. You should love each other more. And when you make a mistake, just smile and say, you know what, tomorrow will be better. Communicate. You are not children. You're adults. And what happens when your husband and your wife decides to separate from you and divorce you? It doesn't feel very well. And the one that really suffers the most are the children. You cannot make your husband or your wife a clone of what you want them to be. And this is the problem we're having today. I want to clone you in the way I want you to be. Number one, your wife is not a Barbie doll that you can put pieces the way you want to. And your husband is not Ken, that you can put him, oh, he looks so handsome. You cannot do this. We don't live in fairy tales. Men, love your wives. Love your wives. See, when you love your wives, when you love your wife, when you nurture your wife, when you respect your wife will turn around and she will please you in anything you like. I mean, certain things I don't agree with. But I mean pleasing in a sense like cooking for you. And maybe, you know, giving you a massage or loving you more or iron your clothes. Certain things that you like. We have forgotten the gift that Yahweh has given us. It is your husband and your wife. In the United States alone today, nearly half of marriages will end in divorce. Modern society have unknowingly redefined the institution of marriage through the media. In the name of entertainment and profits, media have encouraged the increase of ending of the marriage union with a penalty. Movies encourage infidelity and immorality, while television sitcoms bathe our children in the notion that marriage is irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. What matters most, they are essentially taught. It is instant gratification that you should focus on. What is going on in marriages today? Why are husbands and wives speaking gibberish to each other? How can two people living under the same roof speak different language? When he talks, she has no idea what he is saying. When she talks, he has no idea what she is saying. How did we get married and why? Listen very carefully. And please, I hope this really penetrates inside of you. I've spoken a little bit about spiritual marriage, and we got that. Now let me tell you the physical side of marriage. Why did you get married and why? What makes a marriage work is commitment to each other, and commitment is a responsibility. This is why many don't want it. For example, teachers are committed to their students. Parents are committed to teachers are committed to students. Parents are committed to children. Judges are committed to bring justice in the courtroom. The husband and wife are committed to each other in marriage. Committed people don't give up. Only fools do. When you see in your marriage the roof in your house it's leaking, you don't go and you buy another one. You fix it. You fix it. They set up an example for those who don't have the confidence or the experience to go through the hard times and hold out for the reward of success. Commitment forms a solid foundation for a healthy relationship. Sometimes couples must learn new ways of thinking and acting in a relationship to make it work. The whole idea of marriage goes back to the beginning when Adam and Eve they were married because that is Yahweh's way. It is the right thing to do. Opposite attracts. Now, female and male dynamics pervades every level of existence. The relationship between spirit and matter, heaven and earth, Elohim and the people of Israel, the written Torah and the Torah became flesh, the Israelite people and the Sabbath, the soul with the body, the mind with the heart. All these are marriages in which the coming together and contrasting forces result in the creation of life on every level. What is the most powerful force that you have inside of you? It's called love. Unleash the power of love within you. It is the most passionate and most selfish of human emotions. The most giving and the most fulfilling. The most spiritual and the most physical. The most natural and the most irrational. Love is the source of our deepest pleasure and our deepest agonies. The more in tune a person is with your soul, the greater capacity for pure love, unblemished by hidden reasons for doing it and ego. And I said this before and I'll say it again. The reason that the love is different from all relationships because it is the only relationship that the two become one. What does that mean? Why is that so important to know? When in your marriage, you are no longer two, you become one. One means divine essence. Divine essence is the nature of Yahweh and his attribute. His attributes. What is his attributes? He's sacred. He is strong. He's the master of everything. He is El Elyon. He is the most high. He is the strongest one. He is El Rohi, the strong one who sees. He is El Shaddai, the almighty Elohim. He is El Olam, the everlasting Elohim. He is Yahweh. I am, meaning eternal self-existing one. So when you have this experience, what you are experiencing is everything I have told you. And it's a feeling that you cannot describe with words. It's a feeling that you wish you had all the time. With this, I'm going to leave. Do you have a hunger?
Yes.
Do you have a hunger to be fed?
Yes.
Do you have a hunger to be fed?
Yes.
With thirst of affection that needs to be quenched? Every human being, whether single, married, man or woman, has a hunger to be fed a thirst for affection that needs to be quenched, a desire for attention that seeks to be satisfied. One of the best kept secrets of happiness is to love and take care of others. Caring for others enhances happiness levels. All of us have an intense desire to be loved and be nurtured. Expressing love or compassion for others benefits not just the one who receives affection, but also the one who gives it. And the two become one flesh. Marriage is not a voodoo, but divine. Investing in marriage is a rare commodity that both partners must work together to make it happen. Yes, work and lots of work. Marriage, you have to do a lot of work. But the profits are unbelievable happiness and success. Can this be real in a marriage today? Can this be real? Yes. I can vouch for that. Anything that is worthwhile is not easy to get. But once you get it, what do you do with it? When you understand how valuable your spouse is to you, then you will understand the commodity of the marriage worth just like gold. Listen very carefully. We invest money in business. We invest money in real estate, in stocks, in bonds, etc. for the purpose of obtaining an income or a profit. Is that correct?
We invest money in school.
Invest money in school. Very good. Why don't you invest into your marriage, into communication, understanding, and etc. for the purpose of obtaining a happier and better marriage? What you sow, you will reap. Husbands, give more compliments to your wives. Wives, lower your tone of voice to your husband in a kinder way. You will see the relationship improve. Become better listeners. Give your full undivided attention. Don't just hear your husband and wife. Listen to what they're saying. Put yourself in their position. You'll be amazed how much better your relationship with your partner could be. Study your spouse. See what he or she is like. What she likes, what he likes. What frustrates him or her. What makes him happy or her happy. What does he or she needs? What does he or she responds to? Does your spouse need encouragement, space, or compliments? Elohim made us different. All of us are different. And if you want to know how that is, go into a garden and see all the flowers. If you are going to have a good marriage relationship, you have to constantly study your spouse and find out their strength, find out their needs. I have learned this from my husband, Roger. I have never seen anyone so perceptive and constantly in studying me. He knows me from the small details, what I like and what I don't like, when to ask something and when to give me some space. It takes an unselfish person to do this. He realized on the long run that he is making my life easier, because the better he treats me, the happier I am, and the more I want to do for him. What you sow, you reap. You reap. I need to say this. Where am I? Here we go. Building a foundation on a sacred, godly marriage, many couples find practical ways to help their marriages last. Spending quality time together, saying, I love you. saying I love you often, being kind, showing affection, offering compliments, going on dates, writing notes, giving gifts, and being ready to forgive. For example, all these actions are encompassed by the Bible's instruction to husbands and wives. The thing about marriages that we need to understand is how to deal with problems when they arise. Learn to listen to your spouse. Sit down and communicate with each other. Don't hear what they're saying. Listen and put yourself in their position. When you don't understand your marriage, you live in a fog. You forget your true nature. And it leaves us feeling fearful, lost, unsure, confused, and completely lacking luster. You end up with a silent ache in your heart. The only reason or the only way to really ease this pain is to connect with your divine essence and find a way back to the truth of what marriage is all about. We are here on earth on a journey of self-discovery. You identify less with your personality and act more from your inner presence. This inner presence is a feeling and cannot really be described in words. The more you tune into your divine self, the more you learn to live from it and understand others better. When you totally surrender and in the full presence of the two becoming one, the divine union of the feminine and the masculine opens a channel for divine sacred marriage. Why? Because marriage is the highest mystery. Marriage is the highest secret. I hope this has helped you. And just so I can hear from you, let me know what have you learned today. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Until next time.
Shavuot tov.
Shavuot Tov.